Welcome to this video, and what I'm going to talk about is simple UDL tips for PowerPoint. And the reason why I'm leaving the slides like this is that I'm able to do a few practical elements as I go through the presentation. So what I'm going to discuss is I'm going to just briefly mention what is UDL and why would we use it in presentations. I'm going to talk about the slide into accessibility. So it's taking each of the letters and weaving that through the content. I'm going to touch on videos and presentation delivery. So what is UDL and why would we use it in PowerPoint? UDL is a set of principles for curriculum development, and it gives all individuals equal opportunity to learn, including students with disabilities. And the whole idea of, I suppose, implementing UDL into your presentation is that you're designing to improve the learning experience and outcomes for all of your students. So here is a very quick little image where it shows a caption saying for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. So please climb the tree. So you've got 6 different animals and they've been all asked to climb the tree. So I suppose that the idea of this slide is that for you to think about all of your audience are not the same. They've all different learning styles, learning capabilities, and just to keep this in mind when you're creating your content for presentations. So by using UDL within your presentation, what it's allowing you to do is to cater for all your learning abilities. And if you do it from the very beginning of your presentation and take little steps of UDL implementation, you will eventually build on what you're learning as time goes on. Find your style. So find the type of style of presentation that you have if you haven't really thought about it, and carry this through all of your curriculum design in all of your modules. So students start to become familiar, and maybe you do it already, but they become familiar with you and your style. Learners, as I said, become familiar, and it makes it easier for them to navigate around your content. So when we talk about slide, we're talking about styles, links, images, design, and evaluate. And I'm going to go through all of these throughout. If this is possible, the basics, I suppose when we talk about presenting, is to have your content available ahead of time. And what this does is it just allows your audience to cater for, perhaps they want to print out the material. They want to have the slides preloaded on their laptop, for example. Maybe some students need large print or Zoom technology, and by having the slides, they're able to, to work around that. Perhaps there's an interpreter and they need to prepare. So, and if it's a thing that some people like to prepare reading before presentation, so that in an ideal world is the basics, is having your presentation ready to go. So let's look at the first one. The first one is S for styles. So this is where you look at headings, no less than 36 to 44 point. Regular style text, no less than 24. So if it's a thing that you're adding headings into your slides, it's not just like Word where you highlight it and you hit, heading 1. It's where you need to go to the Home tab and you go to Layout. And in here you have all different headings for all of your different types of slides. So ideally in the master slide, which is where you kind of create your template for PowerPoint, and I touch on this at the very end, is where you have all your slides labeled, and from there you're able to import a heading style, import a title style, okay, and so on. So that's how you are able to import a heading style into PowerPoint. One thing is, remember when you are talking about text on slides, less is more, and only the key information should ideally be provided. I suppose to think PowerPoint is not there for you to give you keynotes or you kind of tips on what you need to cover. It's there for your audience. So sometimes we all may throw in extra few slides to help us remember when we're presenting. But again, remember, less is more. And perhaps maybe your slide notes or little key cards that you may handwrite will help, but refrain in a sense from putting all that text on slides. So for example, when you are presenting, it's really important that obviously you have your clear aims and objectives and that there's clear takeaways for your audience. So, you tell or you structure your content in a way where you tell your audience what's going to happen, how long you may spend on a topic, and what's ahead. And then what you can do is you can actually even break up your content into individual slides. So you'll kind of see this format as I go through mine. And it's a good way to kind of divide and segment the different topics within your presentations. And these are all helpful little UDL tips for your audience. So focusing on your presentation, remember, keep it simple, less is more. Have simple and memorable content that they can, so by having images perhaps along with some text is a good way to kind of mix it up, and to be well paced in your presentation all helps when you're presenting. So whether you're going to create a video and you may have a thumbnail of your image on the video, or you don't, or if it's a thing that you're standing up in front of an audience, it's important to face the audience, so that if it's a thing some people like to lip read, you may not have thought about it, but some people do, and it's a way to help drive home the message. Try not to speak too fast, because when you're speaking, perhaps there's closed captions that might be appearing on your screen, or it might be where people are trying to understand different accents. So it's important to try and speak as clearly as you can. And then it might be where there's interpreters also that might be part of the audience. So again, it's important to not to speak too fast. Okay, we're going to move on to L for links. So this is using hyperlinks, and it's a great little tool to be able to support inclusion and ease of access. And it's a really good way to signpost for engagement and to send the reader exactly to that content. And it creates meaningful signposting and to label them correctly. So for example, I can take a really simple example here. So I'm going to take this hyperlink, and I'm going to select it, right click, and I'm going to go link. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just type in, for argument's sake, gmit.ie and hit OK. So now I have turned that to a hyperlink. Okay, so if I was to hover over it and put my finger on control, it'll turn to a little hand, and if I open it or click on it, it's going to bring me straight to the GMIT website. So again, it's just been really focused on your presentation, and it's signposting. So make sure, so ideally that should be called GMIT website. So make sure when you're including hyperlinks that you label them correctly, instead of saying click here or for more information, because that really doesn't mean too much. Say the GMIT website, for example. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to move on. So here I've just put up just a very quick demonstration where I've just actually done it. So you can just maybe for refresher, you can have a look over that. So that's a really good way for hyperlinks. Now this is just a screenshot from a course that I'm teaching in a master's program. And what I do is I try and incorporate this into my Moodle page. So for example, at the beginning of week 5, I do a little kind of breakdown of what I would need the students to do that week, and I highlight and I hide a link, so you can see them here in red if you can. They're clickable links, and it allows the student to navigate directly to those links for more ease of access. Okay, so again, it's really signposting, it's informative, and it's really good easy access for your students. Now I'm going to move on to I for images. And for images, I'm just going to talk about, there's different ways images can be helpful in presentations. So for example, images obviously can support the content that you're trying to do if they're relevant images to the content. So only use images if it's a thing that they're going to provide that extra bit of learning for your audience. So I've selected the image, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go edit alt text. So this is where you need to label your images. If you don't label your images correctly within your presentation, it just means that people of screen readers or I suppose audio that helps users navigate through presentations isn't very helpful. So for example, if I was just to label that, for example, just flag. Okay, so I've just labeled that flag. That doesn't mean anything, right? Because, okay, it means a flag, but what kind of flag? It could be US flag, UK flag. So in this case, I'm going to go back and just call it an Irish flag. So straight away, I'm being descriptive about my image. Okay, so it's important when you label images that you right click and you select Edit Alt Text, and this little kind of option pops up on the right hand side. And what it does is it allows you to um, label the image. So image can be for information, it can be functional in that you may give it a little bit more of a description, or it could be decorative, right? So if it is decorative, again, you select right click, edit, this window will pop up and it says mark as decorative. So it just means screen readers won't pay too much attention to that image. So it won't kind of get in the way of the assistive technology. So again, the whole point of images is labeling them and making sure that they're relevant. And if they're not, don't use them. Okay, so I'm moving on to D for design. So when you're talking about designing your presentation, and this is kind of in relation to the Ally project, so this in the maximum between 6 to 8 lines of text per slide. Okay, to avoid italics and underline for emphasis, to use bold instead, because obviously with italics it might be a little bit harder to read, and underline may think it's a link. Avoid abbreviations and acronyms, and if it's a thing that you need to use them, make sure you explain them ahead of time. And then if it's a thing that you're going to use transitions or animations, limit them or keep them very, very simple because they can be distracting for some audiences. For your composition, if you're going to be using bullet points, make sure that they're ordered and they're easy to read. For tables and charts and graphs, keep them on one slide to itself to help with, I suppose, the information and not having too much information overload. To avoid using caps, because I suppose in one way from a visual point of view it kind of sounds like you could be yelling, okay, or at times for certain viewers it may be challenging to read if the text is in capitals. And to try and left align all of your content to avoid justification. So I'm going to get down now to the fonts. So when we look at fonts here, we can see we have serif sans, and an example of that is Times New Roman, versus sans serif, and examples of that is Arial, Veranda, and Calibri. So there are more of each of those families, but just to show you in this image down here, you can see with the serif fonts that they have kind of little tails on the ends of some of their wording, and that can become hard to read, or for some users it might kind of double up on lines. So if you keep the likes of the green tick here, sans serif, it just makes it very easy and simple to follow, and this is in relating to the text on your slides. Again, still talking about fonts, good font contrast. So for your audience, so I don't know if you've noticed, I have kind of black text on it's not a white background, it's kind of a gray background. So, or white background with black text, but sometimes pure white can be a little bit bright or glary. And that is probably one of the most, if you're trying to be as kind of universal in your content or your design, that is probably the most. So then try not to have text with images over because it can be quite confusing for some readers. So maybe you might put the text underneath the image. And then to alternate with bullet points. So again, I don't know if you've noticed with my text, I have black and kind of a dark blue. So again, by alternating the different color bullet points, again, it makes it easier and more legible. Avoid charts like this. Only put up charts on a need to know basis. And if it's a thing that you need your users to consume as much of this information, what you could do is you could put up a slide and you can also add a little clickable link to more information. So you're kind of taking that information, you're still going to provide it, but it's going to be in another location. Okay, so again, keep them simple. If you're going to use visuals in your presentation, again, to be aware of your audience. So maybe you might need to be a little bit more descriptive of some of your images. Or maybe someone has low vision that they're finding it really hard, or maybe someone in your audience has forgotten their glasses. So again, it's just having that thought process in your mind about visuals, and just to kind of drive through the message. It's no problem using images, and I would encourage you to use them, but just think, if you're presenting, you may need to be a little bit more descriptive. So is it for information or is it for eye candy? And if it doesn't relate to the image, don't use it. So the last part we're going to talk about in the slide for accessibility is E for evaluate. And evaluate, if you're not sure, is what this is actually something that's available in PowerPoint, and it's to check for accessibility. So where you need to go is into your review tab, and you check here this check accessibility. So what it does, it pops up a little accessibility here on the right, and it pulls up stuff from your presentation to help you to be more universal design. So for example, I'm going to open the first one. So it's telling me I have arrows. So all of these arrows are not labeled, minus sign, minus sign. So they're seen as kind of missing alternative text. So for example, I could highlight this, and I could right click, edit alt text, and I can just say it's a line, oops, in here, it's a line to divide a message. Okay. Now, if I mark it as decorative, then the likes of a screen reader will jump over it. So I'm going to put that in, okay? So now that is labeled. So now that's one less message, okay? So now you can see I've only 5. So you get the idea, jump straight to it, and it just allows you to be mindful and more accessible. So here you've got one where it says duplicate slides. So this is where slides have the same heading. So using hyperlinks. So it's a way to kind of help. It's not a mistake in this case, but it's a way to help. Fonts, again, fonts is duplicated slide title. Okay. So here's another one, hard to read contrast. So if I select this, okay, so you can see here the thank you slide is in white. I'm going to change that to black, and see, it's disappeared. So just come back to the evaluate. So that's just the accessibility checker, and if you turn this on at the very beginning, it'll kind of keep you in check as you go through. Okay. Then if it's a thing not to be a complete Microsoft house, there's a link here to go to the G Suite, and I have it at the end of the presentations as well, to use similar accessibility checker in the Google Suite. Okay, so this is really important, the closed captions in PowerPoint. And if you turn this on and you go into presentation mode, it will automatically create closed captions for your audience. So for example, we're going to go to the slideshow tab. We're going to come over here to the captions and subtitles. Okay, and I'm going to select and make sure you tick this here to always have subtitles. We're going to come down here and you're going to select the language that you need. So in this case, it's language English is going to appear on my subtitles. And where do I want them to appear? On the bottom of the overlay, at the top, below the slide, or above the slide? I'm going to say below the slide. So in this case, I have a little video created as well to show you how to do this just specifically, but this will only work once I go into presentation mode, that the captions will come on, it'll say it's listening, and it will provide the closed captions. So that's to show you how to turn it on. And go into presentation mode and you should see them appear. So it's really, really good. By right in education, I think it's a requirement now that we need to have closed captions on our video. So what I'd be saying to you is, if it's a thing you're starting to create your presentations, to find a type of brand or template style for you, and you do that to create a template in PowerPoint in the View Master slide. So I have a slide here. So you just go to the View, and if you come over to Slide Master, in here it shows you all of the different slides that you can have in your presentation. So it does mean that you need to put in the logo. So if you put in the logo in this, for example, this slide here, then when this slide is something you want to bring into your presentation, then the template's already created. You already have the GMIT logo in it, for example. Okay, this is another type. So again, you might have a title, a bit of text underneath. So this is where you create your template and your foundation starts here. You can come up here, you can change your color scale, for example. And I'm not going to do it because I have my template set up for this already. So this is where you can play with all the settings in here, create your master slide, and then what you do then is you go File and you go Save As. Now you need to save it as a template. You don't save it as a PowerPoint because it's just another PowerPoint presentation. You need to save it as a template, and that way you can reuse it again and again. Okay, so I'm just going to close that view and go back to the presentation. So I kind of have actually changed I want to go back. I need to go back to grayscale. Okay, right. So getting there, nearly there. So now we're on videos. And videos is what I want to talk about. So when you're showing videos in presentations, say if your presentation is 15 minutes long, only show a maximum video of 2.5 minutes, or a video or a presentation that's 30 minutes, again, a max video of 5. So keep them short. And again, it's just providing another, I suppose, medium to get your message across. Videos can be very powerful for the learner, and it can really drive the theory and the practice and bring them together. It's quick and easy to make them accessible for students to access, and again, to turn on captions. Why would you use captions? Captions can be used for hard of hearing, for deaf people, for non-native speakers, or if it's a thing that your audio is bad, or just because. Providing captions is a really good way to give students the option, again, whether to view or to listen to the content. They might be on a train, a bus, a car, and by having the closed captions, it's giving them that option, which is again providing UDL. So if we talk about presentation delivery, in a way, just think about your mode of delivery and how you're going to present it. Are you going to talk for a full hour? Are you going to talk for 20 minutes? Mix it up. Maybe have a show of hands, for example. So if we're using Teams, for example, that's a feature that's there. We might do a little discussion. You might do a breakout session. You might open a whiteboard and get students to post to it. And if you're doing longer presentations, maybe you want to build in some group activities, or get them to work on some sort of exercise. So again, try not to present or talk for too long when you're doing your presentations, and having this provided for a mix up of I suppose different types of formats is really, really good. So this is just a little example. So you can see you might have a lecture, you might have group work, video, individual task, a demo, questions and answers. So that might be based on maybe a 1 hour session where you have different elements to bring to the session. And here is just like a little sample session to be for engaging and making presentations accessible. You might have an icebreaker, you might do a group exercise, video, sum up, etc. So again, that's just a little example for you to have a think about. So just thinking of summary, okay, and to recap, font size no less than 24, use good contrast of color, less is more on slides, and try and have your slides visually uncluttered, support text with images, avoid complicated charts, and to add links for more information. So this presentation is brought to you, and it's been based on, I suppose, the UDL framework of learning, which originated by CAST in the USA, and it's looking at the how of learning, the why, and the what. And by bringing all of those elements together, it helps implement UDL. So this is just some links here to the presentations, and thank you.